Well, I believe I am a storyteller. And I think my colleagues here may agree with me, particularly when I tell them a choice joke or so. Any of my colleagues here? Yes, they're trying to sort of look down and perhaps disagree there. So when actually Rick came up to me and asked me to look at this area of authentic assessment, I said to myself, well, what could I actually do? And then I thought to myself, well, this is the area of storytelling. What could be more authentic than telling a story? So in a sense, my job is actually much easier than everybody else's. But even so, I thought about it, and I want to focus on two sort of main areas today, which is looking at a simulation of real-world context, which I apply in my course, which I'm going to describe in a minute, and also a more holistic approach to assessment. So in the beginning, I'd like to just very quickly let you know that I'm from the Center for Applied English Studies. We mainly deal with the area of academic writing literacy, also to a lesser extent presentation skills. We also look at specific discipline skills, vocabulary. So for example, in the area of medicine, we look at medical terminology, etc. Now, another area that we're particularly concerned with is standardization. With all these vast courses that we cater for, this is a very serious issue. So we look at standardization assessment practices, and basically that means that we teach the course content, we teach student skills, and then at the end of it, we assess it against a assessment rubric, criteria rubric. So that sounds fairly standard. But now we come to a sort of a problem, and that is that I am teaching a course, which I'm just going to show you there, which is called Language and Style in Narrative Journalism. And I want to show you sections of the main writing assignments to point out to you a particular problem with this standardized assessment method. And that is, first of all, what is it? You will complete this writing assignment individually. It's a piece of original reporting and writing of around 2,000 words written exclusively for this course. So straight away, it is already an authentic assessment, isn't it? The objective is to give you a chance to put into practice some of the literary techniques, devices, commands of language used in narrative journalism writing. So at this stage, some of you may be asking, what is narrative journalism? You may have heard another term for it, which is literary journalism. And basically, all it is a cross between creative writing and feature storytelling. Your aim is to offer your readers an intimate glimpse of the person, place, or events by using literary devices, techniques such as narrative, etc. And crucial to the assignment is that they need to gather information by a series of interviews. Now, they will also have this opportunity to present their ideas, research, and writing in the editorial meetings. At this stage, you may be asking, well, what kind of stories do they write? Now, this is a fascinating part, because I've read some amazing stories about the umbrella movement, about depression and suicide among students. Obviously, not the ones who committed suicide have written these stories. But anyway, what other stories have they written about being gay in Hong Kong, about the examination system, all sorts of areas. So just reading the stories in themselves is fascinating, and each one is unique, not only in style, but also in content. Whoa. Well, can we have the next slide? Thanks. So therefore, what I've done is I've tried to focus on formative assessment, and I want to show you two sort of, I suppose, pieces of ongoing assessment through the course. First is I want to discuss the area of self-reflection based on genuine and simulated real-life content. And the other is this idea of a co-partnership approach with students. So let's get into it. And if we could go to the next slide. Sorry? Yeah, thank you. The first one is the editorial meetings. There's 3 of them. They're a simulation of the editor's meeting room. What happens is there's some scaffolding that goes on before these meetings, but basically the students take on the role of copy editors and news editors. Usually the ones with stronger language skills opt to be copy editors to help perhaps the weaker students. And then the discussions take place on sections of their stories, for example, scenes, dialogue, character. The students bring a record sheet each meeting, and then they write up the final reflection assignment. Now, of course, I get to read these. And what I find from reading them is that there is what I call a gradual realization of what the real process of writing is about. And creative writing is a painful process. And this is reflected in these reflections where perhaps they may feel rather worried and upset at some of the critique from others. They may also look at a more dispassionate way at their own strengths and weaknesses. The second one is the press conference. I have a guest speaker, usually Shafi Ahmadeh, who's a Somalian journalist, honorary member of the FCC, and also UNHCR refugee in Hong Kong. He was a camera journalist, a cameraman and a journalist, and worked extensively on the front lines working against the terrorist group Al-Shabaab. And what's very interesting about it is that the students prepare questions, reflect on their performance, and what kind of performance do they reflect on? Well, they reflect on their abilities in the interview, because the interview is a crucial element of the stories. And again, afterwards, the reaction that I get from the students is hesitant, because we're looking at a real life context here. They're challenged in their own profession, what it means to be a journalist. Because this journalist, of course, had almost died and seen many of his colleagues die for the cause of journalism. And more importantly, the weak area is the follow-up questions, where students may have already prepared, but when they hear something interesting from the speaker, they're unable to continue onwards. And I think that's largely cultural and probably inexperience, and makes them realize what they need to do. The next one, please. Thanks. Now, if we look at the teacher feedback, Whoa. Okay, going back. Yeah. The co-partnership approach is very important, because, first of all, the student has this ownership of the story, unlike traditional methods of feedback. Perhaps an assignment may be given to the student. Usually everybody has to do the same assignment, but in fact everyone has a different assignment. So I take the approach that they own the story. I take a sort of Socratic question approach. Well, what do you want to achieve? What would you like your reader to know about this? Is this working for you? What other methods would you use? So I give it back to them to think about it. I also take this supportive role where I remind them of the course elements, about scene building, use of digression, grammatical aspects. These tenses here are confusing. What about the vocabulary? It's not quite idiomatic, etc. But also what takes place is this attitude of great encouragement of this creative process. It's all about experimentation and looking at failure as a learning process. These 2 words, of course, which are anathema to the regular student who doesn't really want to know about this, but they find that they take on this approach readily enough. Thanks. So in my concluding remarks, what I'd like to say is that students are engaged in storytelling. Unlike an assignment, these stories actually can be recycled, they can be published in student magazines, newspapers, etc. And what they find out through the creative process is that it's a non-linear one. Stories are in a constant change of flow. They're subject to dramatic changes. They may find that what worked at the beginning doesn't really feel right in the middle of it. It involves self-doubt, criticality, the ability to adapt, and also in this area of self-reflection, the area of performance, which here means the writing performance, suggests that there's a meeting ground for second language users to explore creativity, narrative genres, and empowerment in order to express that most elusive of concepts, voice. And before I finish, in about 1 second, I'd like to say that I believe that my students really, really enjoy this whole process. The kind of remarks that I've got are things like, I look forward to your course all semester. And most importantly, they're allowed to do something that they don't normally do at university, which is write their own interpretation of stories. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your feedback.